Season 6, Episode 5, number 213 of the Decoded podcast.
Mhm.
Chris, we had a great on ramp this morning. Great on ramp. It was nice. You know what it felt like to me? This just you and I just chewing the fat in a different kind of way than what we'd normally do. I don't know what it was about this morning, but it just seemed
Hmm.
different. It seemed like two buddies just hanging out on the back deck, just
Hmm.
taking it easy, having a beverage. Um, I don't know why it felt that way today, but it did. Dude, I want to jump right in to yesterday. Um, and just I'm bringing it up here on my computer because I want to make sure I get this right. But Tim Hortons and their Orange Day donut,
Mhm.
Truth and Reconciliation Day donut. Uh, Dude, I think I was talking to you yesterday about trying not to be offended as much as other people are offended about everything.
Well,
I
I
wish.
got a, I got a thing. Yeah. So I don't know if I can't bring it to the pod yet.
Okay.
But I have a thing, just my side. What I was sort of putting to you, what fueled that up, and this is, I think, do this as quick as possible.
Yeah,
The
because I want to talk about the orange donut.
I know. I'll get there. I'll get there. But it's. I think this is, if anyone ever chooses to or notices this podcast, the amount of life that you and I live outside the podcast is big. We're in different boards, different panels, that kind of different levels, different kind of priorities. It's funny how different our jobs are, but some of the things that it connects on are deep, like very quite deep in sort of being in service to the students, being in service to the system, being in service to the community. So I always dig that about, how we're talking and how we're living our school lives. But there's stuff there that definitely I wish I could speak directly to. Um, right now, there's stuff going on kind of in and around my school relative to Orange Shirt Day that I can't speak to right now. You and I and Onrat were talking about that sort of like kind of being a tourist or a visitor on topics or with things, and I feel like right now, I wish I the talk that I'm having about this stuff is actually with people at my school. So suffice it to say, some stuff happened this week that there's gonna have to be some learning that comes out of it around how you support, how you recognize, how you dignify survivors of the residential school system, the Canadian residential school system. And definitely we're going to have some professional development at our school. So that was kind of the backstory, I think, to us being in a conversation about being offended. I'll be context guy.
I'm glad you dropped that.
A little
But yeah,
backstory.
we were talking about that, and I'm trying to walk this line of being less offended by things, and it's hard in a way because, as you know, and for our thousands of listeners who listen in every week, over time they've heard me kind of bust more into equity and diversity, and I'm looking at the layers of my life and how like colonialism has played a role in getting me to where I am today. And I'm kind of pushing back a little bit these days as I reflect on who I am, what I'm about, and the way I've been treated, um, just in general as I navigate through the world. So I'm trying not to be that guy who's like offended 24/7. Um, and then when I first heard about the donut, um, the Tim Hortons orange sprinkle donut campaign, I don't know how many people really understand what's going on. So Tim Hortons, they say that 100% of all the fundraising donut sales is being donated to indigenous charities. So that's not a bad thing. It's not. But do we really need an orange sprinkled donut? Like, do we really need, because there's just something there that rubs me the wrong way. I wouldn't say I'm offended. I just say there's something about Tim Hortons doing this. We know big business. Yeah, sure. You go to Timmy's, you get the orange donut, that money goes to an indigenous charity. But the coffee that you bought and maybe the bagel, and
Mhm,
the
mhm.
hot chocolate for your kid, none of that is going anywhere except into Timmy's pocket. So,
Nobody ever buys just a donut.
well, that's
So there's was it colonial and collateral profits made off this.
I love it. I love that, colonial and collateral profits. So that's kind of what I was like, "Timmy's, this is not cool. This is not cool." Now, I am the one guy that will buy the orange sprinkled donut because the money is going somewhere
Yeah.
that I like where it's going. So, I'll get a dozen of them and share them with the family or with work. That's me. You know me, I don't buy coffee from these places. I
Mhm.
don't I don't, it's not my thing, it's not what I do. So,
Not
uh,
regularly.
okay, not regularly.
Just we're doing truth to power here. You were on that one tear where you're the
Well,
McDonald's iced coffee was
y
like,
yes, the McDonald's iced coffee, yes, but
which
it's
is
not.
delicious.
I'm not an everyday, like, I'm still not that guy who
Mhm.
needs to
I
get it
gotcha.
every day before work.
Mhm.
And because I drive a lot for work, so if I'm driving past a Mickey D's and I'm feeling the vibe, yeah, I'll pull in and grab one and then keep going, right? But it's not my default. That's not what I do every day. So I was a little bit just looking at Tim Hortons kind of with the side eye. Just thinking, I don't know. I guess it's like there are some things in my mind that just don't work. That's one of them. The other thing that doesn't work for me, and then I'm gonna drop it and we can move on. The other thing that doesn't work for me is the Christmas advertisements and stuff before Remembrance Day. It's
Mm.
like, can you people just shut your cake holes until November 12th? Really? Can we not honor the people who made the ultimate sacrifice? Really? That's just me. Um, I now my brain is like, okay, the next thing is Halloween, which isn't really that big of a deal, but I want to make sure if my kids want to go out that I support them with that or whatever. And it's fun. Like it's fun to see these kids in costumes, you give them candy. Like I like it. And then right after Halloween, it's like in my mind, it's like put the poppy on, focus on Remembrance Day, and nothing else for me matters. That's just me. But then I saw a commercial the other day and they snuck in the Christmas vibe. It wasn't a Christmas commercial, but they snuck in Christmas stuff because they
Mhm.
know how the brain works. So they already got people thinking about Christmas. I'm like, this is it's just it doesn't work for me. It's not cool. That's all.
Mhm. There's an I don't uh so the stuff that happened at my school, what I was I guess appreciating. So if someone you sort of notice a thing, let's say I don't even know what the hell to call it. Let's you something where you're like, that ain't right. There's like that moment, and I'll just sort of lay that against equity learning, equity training, being a responsible human, and you sort of notice a thing and you say that ain't right. And then you can sort of take it to that. You're sort of moving from kind of abstract to action, right? Like where you kind of sit in that change agent kind of mindset. Um, I'm always watching for individuals that easily transition between noticing a thing that they're pissed off about or a thing that they're pissed off about for somebody else, or they just notice a thing that they say that ain't right. And then they go right to action without even thinking, just right to action. And I will say, um, I think what's fascinating about that is that in the process of doing that, you can actually make mistakes that can be on one hand irritating and on another hand traumatic, right? So it's the I would say it's um, the necessary mindfulness that has to come along with. There's a very very clear and necessary set of mindfulness tools that have to come along for the ride when you're doing allyship, and making sure that you're consulting, that you're talking with people, that you're not just like Kool-Aid man into the room and smashing that wall down. That can be useful, but understanding in doing so, there could be someone sitting right on the couch there. I love the graphic that you put up about the Simpsons, because there have been graphics where I think those that's a pod post you put up on Twitter. Um, and they're sitting there on the couch, and the start of that The Simpsons is always them kind of making it to the couch somehow. Um, and I've noticed a few people this last week, they are the sort of like that Kool-Aid character just smashing through the wall and not even thinking for a fact that there could be someone sitting on the couch on the other side of that wall, right? Someone that could be harmed. And that's kind of how I, broadly I'm thinking about the stuff that happened at my school this week. It is a case study in intention versus impact. It's also a reminder of you and I on the on ramp were talking about. I often think to myself, I shop slow and buy fast. People don't often pay attention. No one notices how I kind of how ninja I am at just sort of like taking in information and kind of doing my research and thinking about a thing. It's always happening in the background. It's a constant flow. To people watching, sometimes it looks like I go from A to Z without any of the other alpha in between, but it's how I present my decision making to the world. I do a lot of background kind of things. It was very similar to when we bought our house, the current house that we're in. We were looking, like just constantly looking. And you get this kind of like weird kind of funk, like, where am I in this process anymore? Because you're just looking at so many things, so many factors. So everything about it was just so extra. And then we're pulling out of the driveway of our current place. I'm like, that's the house. And Karen's like, what? I'm like, that's the house. We need to put the offer on. This is the house. We have to get this house. And she's like, where does that come from? Like, we hadn't had like a conversation prior to that within a reasonable amount of time where we both were kind of like pros, cons, 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 pros, pros, like where we kind of existed in the same spot. So it was surprising. Now, not trauma inducing. There was no pain there. I mean, it just created a certain amount of surprise. Um, I think this is one of the things that happens with equity work. I think that I feel for myself, I'm constantly in this state of kind of surprising people with how I'm thinking about something. And then what I've gotten better at is staying around to help them work through that surprise, because I've started to understand that if through my equity or change agent work, if I'm trying to get people to sort of think in a better way, I can't just bug bomb the conversation. I have to stay around there longer. I have to try and um, still gain invitation into the space of their processing. Like, I can't sit there and tell them what to do, but can I sit and listen to their process of thinking and then try and sort of like include their thinking in my thing? Like, it's that negotiating, it's the collaborating kind of moment. So I'm very curious after this moment that's happened this past week. What is the enforced learning that comes out of it? Because I suspect, because of the nature of the event, there'll be some whole school kind of stuff. And they started it. There's a resource that's inserted into our teacher newsletter. So like our weekly bulletin. And I had heard through some of my connections that this was something that was going to be suggested. I also heard through some of my connections that it might be spoken to in a direct way, but it was just inserted without context into our newsletter. So I'm curious. So back to the orange donut. I agree with you that I agree with you. Actually, on the one hand, I don't care about your seasonal thing that you mentioned. I actually don't. I don't care. I don't care if they're introducing. I don't care. You start advertising Halloween to me on like at Easter time. I don't care. I really don't care. That's fine. The bureaucracy of it. I'm like, really? Like, I'm like, that's kind of funny. But I'm like, I have no grounding in any actual holiday where I think it must have its space. There must be space between holidays. No, because if it's advertising to me, it's not about the holiday for me, anyways. Like, I look at them like, you just want me to buy your crap. So this isn't this. That's not my holiday. That's not my holiday. Um, the other thing that you said though about, when we're talking about the profits, that sort of profits over people or profits on top of people. The I someone um a lot of those donuts were bought yesterday. I saw a box with those on it, and I heard someone say, "Happy Orange Shirt Day." I heard the words, and I was kind of going out a door, and I say, "Yeah, that's not a thing. That's not a thing. There's no there. You don't put that word on the front of that. I don't think that's the. I don't. I really don't think that's the intent here, and I don't. It doesn't matter that you have the box of donuts, right? You just don't say that thing. I didn't sit in that moment much longer, other than just offering that. I was on my way out. I was on my way to um, um, a spec ed meeting, an IPRC, so I had to be there. Uh, yeah. So, but uh, but now there's going to be conversation coming out of that. We had that's only one face of an issue that I think you and I are kind of we're in the dark to a degree, kind of putting our hand on it and saying it's this thing. This issue is about this thing, and we each have. I always love the. You ever seen that example of the? It's a drawing. It's a metaphor. It's a philosophy. That idea of in a dark room, there's an elephant and several people in a dark room, and so you can't see. You know, there's other people in the room. You know, there's this big thing, the elephant in the room, and each person has their hand on the elephant, and someone says has their hand on the tail. I say whatever this thing is. It's like rope. It's like rope, and then someone has on the flank, and they're like it's like a wall. It's like a house, and then someone is sort of like near the chest. It's like it's got a beat. Wait, there's something in there, and then someone's on the trunk, and then on the tusks, and on the ear, and they all have sort of like a fair assessment of what this means. Turn the light on and like, oh, it's an elephant, okay, and you kind of. But the other things are true as well, right? The metaphor, the simile, that's true as well. I'm seeing more and more of that. Um, I'm seeing more and more in that in the school, which I like because people are finding ways to sort of interpret the necessary equity work. And that's also what was part of this thing that happened this week. It was an interpretation. Um, the impact was not I don't think the impact was um the impact definitely did not it was not a generative or productive impact on many levels. But as I said, the learning that we have around it afterwards, I am looking forward to it because part of the event I witnessed, and I had a little bit of that, like we were talking about that. Yeah, there's something not quite right about this. And I didn't quite have the words to stitch it together. And you know the story. I've shared more of the story with you. I didn't quite have the words, but there was something about it. And then someone reframed it for me. I'm like, that's it. They turned on the light. And I saw the elephant. I had my hand on one part of it and I was comparing it to a thing and noticing them like, and then they turn off like thank you. Thank you for sort of like, and then my brain turned 180 and now I can't not think that way. It's one of those stories I wish I could just reveal, but it would not be wise right now for me to reveal it because it's something that's in process, very much in process. But it'll come out in further pods. The challenge of equity work, definitely the challenges. And this isn't polite politics I'm playing. I'm just aware of that in the full shakeout of this. There are individuals that are working through this for an end, not an end, but like a goal that me putting my opinion on it will not be helpful. It will not be helpful. Equity work.
Thanks for sharing what you can share.
Mm,
I get that. I think one of the things about you and I doing this podcast is our day-to-day lived experience fuels us, right?
mhm.
It leads us to places where we feel we need to talk about certain things and hash them out, break them down. But we're still both professionals, members of the College of Teachers, leaders in our community, um, and so we need to consider what we say and how we say it here. Even though this is our time, it's our space. It's public, and hey, everybody's offended at some point. So yeah, we just got to stay professional, even though We just got to stay professional.
What is I often wonder what that means, eh? Do you ever I like that. I like how you're sort of I feel um I feel I get the sense that that idea of staying professional, um, that there's something about the accountability frame that's changed a little bit. Because I feel like you and I are doing very professional things right now. And you even mentioned this week you were talking about how podcasting very specifically kind of allows for a place for you to develop communication skills, and how important that is. Like it's a one of you introduced me to this idea of fluencies as being something more than just specific to a language. Like there's a lot of different things that have um the possibility of developing a fluency, and they don't even have to run in the same direction to be sort of fluent in something. And I think in different ways you and I have become kind of fluent in podcasting to a level where to not to a level, but into places where on one hand it feels really easy to do, like it just to sit down to do this thing, to put it out there, to sort of just speak our thoughts, to speak our minds. um it also makes it very complicated as well, because there is an element of checking yourself, because we've said many times there's things that we do, and this isn't okay, so it is titillation, as in we're telling you we know things that we can't talk about. It is that. Like it can't not be that, right? We've got receipts. It's like we have that. And I think that would happen regardless. I think anyone that kind of digs into any kind of good media where they want to keep following and consuming it, at some point you're like, geez, I wonder what's happening behind the thing that's happening. You can do that with a book, do it with a movie, whatever. But at the same time, when you get when you notice you notice your comfort zone in that space, in that fluency, that was part of what got you and I think, to pivot from the one-to-one prefab post-production on intro music, doing I don't know if you could say podcast classic style. That's what got us both thinking, well, how do we adjust so that we can kind of move through what potentially I felt as a wall in my fluency growth. We're like, let's do this live. Okay, that's one. Good. Do we need anything else? Well, let's put it on as video on YouTube. Oh, okay. Let's do it every week. Right. So now we've discovered three more level ups to that fluency that we didn't know before. And all the while, I think one of the challenges is that if someone were to choose to start doing podcasting as reflective practice and put it out there for other people to listen to, it can be super simple. And there's many individuals out there that are kind of working that. Um, I'm starting to crave some sort of a dialogue, I think, with other podcasters, that it's no longer about the topics. It's about the skill of communication. It's actually where you're actually becoming more shrewd around, am I actually learning better and listening better? Am I actually shaping my ideas more clearly? Am I finding more active states to talk about the stuff that's important to me? And because that's the one thing about podcasts, there's always lag. Like you and I, there's even lag to this, but it's live. So it's kind of like you get the week roundup if you decide to listen to, this thing. Other casts like that, because of the serial nature of it, like you could be listening to your favorite podcaster, and that pod was created 2 months ago. So where does it exist in living history of that person's learning? It always does, but what's your proximity to it? Everybody can kind of check in weekly on us if they wanted. Hey, come out with Clough and Chids and Clough, come and hang out, have a conversation, listen to a conversation. What becomes more complex all of a sudden, once you sort of feel like you're simplified with the tech, it's very complex for me to pull up. It's becoming more and more complex for me to pull up on topics. Um, it's becoming more complex for me. Like here I'll be. You want to? Can I be honest with you? I don't want to lie to you. Can I have a little minute? Just a little minute for one more little conversation. I'm kinda looking forward to being able to retire relative to our conversations because and I'm gonna be that guy. There's gonna be stuff that I'll end up talking about that someone's gonna say, "Clef, why didn't you talk about this when you were in education?" Fair? That's fair. But there's other parts too that I could like, there is the there's filters. There's filters. And I'm not suggesting to go full kind of like Joe Rogan on EDU, but there's a space there where I get it just to be able to speak completely freely without that direct I guess I could still be prosecuted, I guess. And I'm not talking about being a complete idiot. I'm just saying this past week talking about the equity stuff. Um, I will just say to anyone listening to this is that I'm still grinding it out inside. I'm still grinding it out. Like I'm not buying the donut. I don't have an orange t-shirt, but I am doing the work on the inside. So when I can speak more freely about what that work looks like, I feel like I have to retire before I do that. I don't know. Am I an a-hole for framing it that way? I don't know. I don't know.
Let me be honest with you for a second.
I appreciate that about you.
I hear what you're saying about I hear I like to think of we're being cautious for sure because
That's a good word. That's a
our
good word.
our livelihood's attached
And there's
to
other people
this.
dependent on us too.
Yeah, 100%. Like you said so many good things that lit me up in different places. I'm not going to go there except to say the orange shirt thing. Like yesterday, lots of I was wearing an orange shirt.
Mhm,
Um and I had a couple of people say to me as I was going from place to place, "Oh, I didn't wear one today because," and I'm like, "You don't need to tell me why. I don't care. Like I don't need to know. You do you. You do you." And it's one of those things where it's like, I see you in the classroom every day working, teaching kids, helping kids, being good to kids. There's different ways to do the work. And again, it goes back for me, it's about relationship. When you have relationship with people, you know where they come from, you know how they operate. Um, and some people I think are great, and some people I think are not great, even though the optics are good, right? So it's like everybody's just got to do their thing. Everybody's got to do their thing. And I wore an orange shirt, but I'm not buying an orange donut. I'm not doing that. Um, if I really want to give my money to, well, actually the shirt, so okay, I bought a couple of orange shirts. One of them was through our school board Indigenous student achievement consultant, and
mhm.
she got it from a reserve. I'm not sure of the exact how it played out, but my money for that shirt went directly to Indigenous people, directly to them. So I was more than happy to purchase a shirt that way. And then my wife had purchased a couple of shirts and she used her Cricut to put some stuff on them. And that's what I wore. But my son wore the shirt that I bought. Um, he wore it to school. And it was, it was one of those things I said to him, "Hey, bud, I bought this shirt. I didn't know your mom had already bought some shirts, but I'm not going to wear this one. And your school said that it was okay for you to be out of uniform if you wear an orange shirt. So do you want to wear it?" And he's like, "Yeah, yeah, I'll wear it." Then when he came home to school, I said to him, "Did a lot of people wear orange shirt?" He said, "Oh, some did." I'm like, "Okay, how did you feel about it?" He goes, I liked showing my support that way." And I was like, "Cool, that's cool." But there's just, dude, there's so much we can say about the way things work and whether they work or not properly, but we don't. And it is a little bit of like, hey, yeah, we know some things, but everybody knows some things about things. It's like you just kind of keep motoring with your day. I've just become I use the word tired even though I'm not feeling tired. I'm kinda tired of I'm just tired of, like, you see patterns of nonsense.
Mm,
I once was used to them and just went with the flow. Now I'm like, they disturb me, so I how do I find a way to negotiate that without just making enemies left, right, and center? Because that's not what I'm about. I've been reflecting on this a lot. I don't wanna go places and have people say, "Oh, he's back. I don't wanna talk to him." Like, that's not I don't wanna do that. I don't wanna have to go to places, not wanna talk to people either. So I just think I just keep working on relationship,
mhm,
people understanding. Like, for example, there's a lot of head bumping. There's gonna be a lot of friction with the work that I'm doing and the work that the schools are doing, right? And I always like to bring it back to a couple of very simple things. For me, my perspective, what is my role? Why is my job in existence? That's the first thing. So people need to understand this, I'm here for a particular reason. And then the second thing is that the focus is on the student. And that's hard. Sometimes it's hard for me. Sometimes it's hard for other people because we all have perspectives and we all have there's politics, and it's like sometimes what's best for the student is not going to be best for me, and sometimes what's best for the student is going to be best for the school. And there's a lot of that, right? And so I'm learning how to deal with that. But when there's that conflict, it's like, well, hold on a second. What is the conflict about? Where's it coming from? And if it's coming from my role in a process, well then let's at least get it out there. Like, let's get it out there. Nobody's got time to waste. So speak your mind, say what you are going to do or you're not going to do, so that I can then, like, I got no problem with how you want to operate. I'm going to invest my time in places where people can use my support and I can try to make a positive difference. And if there's a group of people that don't want it, then let's expose that so that everybody knows, and then we can make the decisions that we need to make. Like, do you think I want to be in a school where they don't want to support the work that I'm doing to support the kid? I don't want to be there. And yeah, they'll say it's about the kid, but they won't do anything for the kid about the kid. And they don't like where I'm coming from. It's okay. Find another way to deal with your situation, and I'm going to go and help another school. Like, it's okay. I really don't have a problem with that. The people above me might, but let's have some exposure so that everybody knows what's happening. And then some people have to make some tough decisions. The tough decisions aren't for me, right? I'm a cog in this colonial system. I recognize that. I'm one part. I don't have to dick around all day long. Let's expose the situation for everybody to see, and then let's move on. And I told you in the on ramp, somebody connected with me and said, "We're going to need your support in this situation." So then I asked a couple of questions, and the responses, I was given honest responses, but the responses don't jive with my position. So here we have a group of people that want me involved in something, but according to, like, the information I was given, it's not part of my mandate to be part of that situation. And so then I respond, and the response is not taken well. They're like, "Well, we need you." I'm like, "That's not my space." And then it's like, it's the silent, like, "Well, how do we deal with this?" We just expose it. We yell it out as loud as we can, then we let the people in power, the people who have the authority to make those decisions, make their decisions. If somebody tells me, "You're going there and you're working with this kid," then I'm going there and I'm working with the kid. But until I'm told that, I've been given parameters, and it's part of my job is to live within those parameters. And obviously there are extenuating circumstances, but that's not for me to make the decision. That's above me. So then you got the people who yell and scream, "Well, be a leader, make a decision, make a judgment." I'm like, "Yeah, I do that every day." But there are some things that are beyond my role. And I'm not going to pretend that it's everything's part of my role. I'll just expose it, bring it into the light, and then let the players above me who are responsible for these decisions make them. And sometimes I'm learning they don't make the decisions, they just let things roll, which causes more problems underneath. Expose it. Expose it, build relationships, because I'm not walking around trying to burn houses down. But can we friggin' be truthful here and there? Can we do that? That'd be nice.
I saw someone uh in our Twitter feed. Where is that? Got to get back to the notifications. Um Mrs. DG DeRoche, George DeRoche. I don't know. Commenting here, and I was just trying to see what is it. Would you? Oh, the whole. I maybe they're listening in. I don't know, but they're agreeing that there are different ways to do the work. Just do the work. That's tricky, eh? That's tricky. That's one of those tricky kind of statements because I have complicated feelings. If we make it, if we use the sort of the donuts and the t-shirts as a as one access point to that conversation, I know that many people their social justice work is color coded, and they jump from sort of initiative to initiative. Now, again, long game, short game, just do the work. I'm agreeing with DG out there. I'm agreeing with them. But there is something that like I want to have more conversations around how do we move from color coding the events to digging in deep, right? I really like, and I've still been thinking about that aha moment from the Deep Diversity book, um, Chowdhury's book, bringing to light that whole idea of, what are the implications of navigating a anti-colonialist, anti-racist, anti-oppression space and only having oppressive colonial racist tools to do it. And this speaks to the systems within which we work. Um, I think that in some ways that it's complicated if we start with the t-shirt or the donut because you create a sliding scale of outcome. As in, well, the some of the funds did go towards that, and the t-shirt does show affinity and an alliance of some sort. Um, so part of what I've sort of kind of, I guess, one of the I'm coming back to what we were talking about in the beginning is that I find one of the ways for me to figure out what the right thing to do is to take the risk of even doing a thing. So maybe that's what DG is referring to here. Maybe that's the space that I can land on it and say, okay, so if you feel like the work is you need to buy, I don't want to say need, but if your work equity work informs you to buy an orange t-shirt, I have to accept that in some ways that is equity work that you're showing alliance or affinity with. The way that I work it with my students is like we have to get beyond the performative part of it and actually engage in something that we don't even know if it'll create change. But we're going to do some work and some research, some investigation, some conversation, gain invitation into other spaces. We're going to push ourselves hard first and then see if someone will, after we sort of create a body of work or a body of understanding, see if someone will talk to us. Maybe somebody who has lived experience, maybe someone who's further down their path in the equity work. But that line that line about just do the work, um, the suggestion in itself is pretty abstract. It really is abstract, and it does have an element of, um, I feel like that could be coming from the mothership. For me personally, it doesn't hit the ground where I can make sense of that directly from that statement. But I think I agree with it. I do agree with it. But but I think that statement though, I've probably seen on a t-shirt too. And if what we know is some people will buy a t-shirt that's just color coded and that'll be their version of equity work, then why wouldn't someone also buy a t-shirt that's color coded that has a slogan on it? Like, is that a layer deeper in equity work? You know what I mean? Yeah, I like it. I like it. I don't know where to go from that one. I appreciate that perspective. I have heard it. I have heard it. I always wonder where that lands. If I said that to you, Chids, just do the work. What do you hear in that? Specifically, what's your what as let's work within the language of yesterday. So on September 30th, and I'm intentionally let's isolate the day. Let's say this is the day. This is the day, Canada. This is the day. Someone says to you, do the work. I want to get just the phrase right. Agree. There are different ways to do the work. Just do the work. What do you hear in that? What's the call to action for you in that?
For me, on September 30th, with respect to truth and reconciliation.
I'm gonna let you roll. See,
Oh,
that's what I'm here.
well,
That's what I wanted to hear because all it is like I'm using the term call to action. So there's the T-shirt, orange shirt, do the work. What's your call to action?
okay. So for me, without, I guess you've given me some information that my little brain can take and work with.
Mhm.
Doing the work, call to action, orange shirt for me means recognizing what has happened in the past, listening to the people who were affected by what happened, and actually listening. Like, shut my mouth and open my ears and hear their story, and not hear their story so that I can respond appropriately. Just let it come in and sink in. What do they have to say? What happened to them? Who did these things to them? Who let these things happen? Just listen, and not only listen to their story, but listen to what comes next. What comes next? What do they want? If anything, some of them want nothing. They just want to say this happened to me, it was horrible. Some people are like, we have some ideas on how to move forward. I want to hear those ideas. Then I drill down to what can I do? In what small way can this individual help move things forward? I feel like part of what I can do, a couple of things. One is I've looked at the truth and reconciliation recommendations, and I
Calls
look.
to action. Calls to
So
action.
thank you. And
Yeah.
I what are some things that I can directly do? What are some things that I can keep aware in the back of my head so that as I'm living, I can honor some of those calls to action in an authentic way, not just to say, hey, I knocked off 32, 33, and 34. Nah. It's like, okay, this one I can do. Like this one I can feel good that I'm doing something to help move things forward. Also, it kind of burns me too that like the Catholic faith is part of this problem. Um, the church is the church is part of this problem. I belong to the church. I'm a Catholic educator. Um, it's my faith, and we did some pretty bad things. to people. Um, how do I reconcile being part of that? What do I do? Like, these are things that I'm thinking as you say call to action, as you say orange shirt day, as you say do the work. So I listen. I look at my work, the everyday grind, and I look at the kids and I look at the families, and they're not all indigenous, right? So I'm generalizing to like everybody that I come across, and it's like, what can I do today to try to make your life a little bit better? And that's what it boils down to. And even yesterday, like, I found myself in a couple of moments of frustration, and I literally took a step back. I took time to breathe. I became very aware of my surroundings. I became aware of my thoughts. I became aware that I needed to stop, and I needed to revisit why I got into the work that I'm currently doing. And then I just said, okay, make that call, ring that doorbell, go to that school, because these are the things that I can do. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's what it means to me to do the work on yesterday. And the other thing too is I don't want to just wear an orange shirt
Mm,
on September 30th. I really do want to make it part of my practice to be, well, it has, I'm proud to say it has become part of my mindset. I am very attuned uh to the indigenous people of Canada in terms of, like, every time I read something about it or I see something about it, I pay close attention because I've told you this before, that I'm really proud that my parents chose Canada to land and to start their family. That's not changed. I'm still proud that they chose Canada. I'm a little bit well, not a little bit. I'm disappointed in how Canada has treated its indigenous people. It's not right. Um, we can't undo what's happened, but we can certainly move forward. And we need to listen, and we need to act in a way that's respectful to the people that were affected. That's what I believe. That's so every day I'm trying to learn more. I'm trying to do my part, which means that I need to listen and sometimes ask direct questions. I don't want to beat around the bush. Just like, let's have some direct questions. Let's have some direct answers. That's what it means to me.
yeah. It gets me. I, going back to, like what color's your equity, you know, as you look along your teacher outfits and the different, not you, but the royal you, other teachers out there, and you look to see all the different all the equity uniforms that, and on one hand, I'm hearing Paul Gorski in my ear talking about, the equity detours and how the once a year commemorations or celebrations, moments of remembrance, they're not enough, right? They're not enough. Or they're not a thing. They shouldn't be a thing, but they are a thing. So how do we deal with this thing that has given us a single point of focus on a really, really kaleidoscopic topic, lived experience, moment in time, a piece of living history? Like these things, I get swept up in this idea that the energy that surrounds donning an orange t-shirt and the compulsion it seems that people are willing to participate in that. There's something in me that craves to see that exact same short burst of energy, but in a long game form. Like I want people to want to jump into the work with that same energy that they do with the orange t-shirt on yesterday. And I get what I'm kind of talking about here is that they're probably two very different. They are two very different things that don't. Maybe I'm making. I don't know. The way I'm connecting in my mind though is that there is an element of willingness to engage in what, in some measure, is equity work through the T-shirt that sometimes is really, really invisible in the long game work. And um every with all the initiatives that pop up in the school, I don't have any of the t-shirt. I don't have any of the t-shirt colors. And I think I've kind of done that by choice, thinking I'm just staying in the long game work. Why do I need to have the commemorative or the affinity shirt that's associated with it? And I don't think I've landed on a really good answer for that. But it hits me every time. Like the night before, I'm like, damn, I don't have a purple shirt. I don't have a pink shirt. I don't have like I don't It's kind of like my fashion, my garb, I feel is a separate, it's a separate part. It's on a different part of my operating system. Um, and then I immediately think to myself, well, should I? Is that a part of the deep work too, to have the uniform? I don't know. That's what, if you were to ask me, the call to action is for me in this. And yes, I did a lot of work with myself and my students, looking at the calls to action that focus on education and educational reform. That's kind of where my kids wanted to spend their time learning, so I spent time learning with them there. Um, and it was rich, the different things that they got into and the questions that they asked, in the moments where, like I said, I don't know. So we have kind of like our parking lot of things that we need to, that's basically, that turns a one period conversation into a full week, turns it into an inquiry that takes up a lot better space. You intentionally give it space so that it can breathe and you can figure stuff out. um but I don't have the t-shirts. The measure, one of the very explicit measures, it would seem, from a colonialist perspective, is that you need to have the t-shirts. I don't know. I have complicated feelings. I have complicated feelings. Um, is it beneficial? Is it beneficial to have the shirt? Period. Is it even more beneficial to have the shirt if you are doing the work beyond the day, beyond the detour day? Now, in this particular case, this day is an important freaking day. Like that does like it's a like it's a day. There's so many things that sort of are connected with September 30th, that there's a lot of space for anybody that wants to sort of float in that activism to change agent space. Like there's a lot there. Social justice, like it's a buffet. There's so much that you could sort of jump into and find a space in. Um and I would encourage anyone to try and find a space in there to make some change. But I don't have the shirts. I don't have the shirts.
And that's like, from my perspective, that's fine. But
Mhm.
I'm in a good space of, you don't need to have the shirts. And I'm biased. I know you well. I know the work you do. I think we equity creeps into our conversations like a lot.
Every
Well,
single somehow,
I think
which
every day, yeah.
isn't ain't that the thing though? No surprises there.
And it's funny, it's not like we're talking about it in a way like it's like lived experience. Every day we're running into something. We're like, yeah, this happens or this is happening. How do I maneuver? Or what does this look like? Like even this business of being offending people all day, every day. It's like it's gonna happen. People with the best of people put things out and people receive them a certain way. And I've told you, I'm trying to live where I'm not friggin' feeling offended 24/7. I don't want to be. People are gonna say stuff. I'm gonna interpret it. It's funny because I get more hype from the people around me. The people around me are like, "Whoa, what did you do when they said that?" And I'm like, "Oh, whatever." They're like, but, yeah, there's lots of buts, 100%. And you know what? People are taking things I'm saying and being offended. It's like I just give them one of these, and if they're my friend, it's like, okay, well, you're my friend, so I'd love to work this out. but if, they may not want to. And it's like, well, okay, because I'm kind of living on my terms now. Spent a lot of years living on other people's terms. There are only a few people whose terms I'm willing to like kind of pay attention to and navigate. And a lot of them aren't outside my house. And even it's hard enough in my house. So it's like it's just one of those things. It's just one of those things. Um I kind of it's kind of weird. I get a vibe. I get a vibe now about when people go off on certain things, I'm kind of feeling like I kind of can make a connection to where they're coming from because they've been maybe living in a space that's been restrictive, or they've kept their mouth shut for years about certain things because they didn't want to rock the boat, and now they're just like it just overflows. They're like, "Yeah, I'm going to sink that friggin' ship because I got to say what I got to say." And part of me and the way I'm thinking makes me think that I'd be a really good principal with this thought process and wanting to listen to people, but also wanting to stick to my values. But also, some of that makes me not want to go into that work, seeing what I'm seeing those administrators go through. It's a weird, weird thing. It's a mind weird thing. It's like I feel like I'm in a space where I can lead in a way that's empathetic, but yet sticks to certain values because you have to have both. But then I think that's also it gets you into trouble. It can get you out of trouble and it can get you into trouble. And it's like, yeah, I don't want to go there. That just popped up in my head that I think I'm in a good place that way, but I'm in such a good place that way that I don't want to put myself in a position where these new parameters and like all kinds of extra things that you have to deal with that I just don't want to deal with. I don't want to deal with them.
I've noticed we've had tons of combos about formal leadership in the board. Props to Ramona Maharg. We've got some content out there from our discussions about leadership and the process of leadership. And I get it where you say the version of you right now, the version of you as a leader in equity, in re-engagement, in spirituality, your spiritual practice as well, um, assessment, literacy, digital fluency, all these things where you are feeling like you're dialed into your leadership. From my observation, there's a context and a temporal nature to it, as in I've yet to see the fact that you have all these things kind of moving in a way that you like. I haven't i haven't been invited into the story of someone that's in a principal position that is that clear. It becomes a little bit more fuzzy. There's an autonomy when you are a part of our unions, and there's a capacity that sometimes other educators don't see. They sort of think to themselves, if I can make it to that position of power, then I've sort of arrived. And I kind of I dial it back and I say, but I really do believe we have maximal freedom and possibility when we're connected with our classrooms. I do believe that when you move from a school proper or move into administration, so you can go into a full consultancy where you are kind of working from the board office, that the agenda that you're beholden to is a lot more rigid. There's very specific kind of deliverables and metrics that, yes, those are a part of the teaching space, but it I what I've observed is that limits, or at least slows, or at least delays some of the things that you're talking about. Like the things that, make you feel creative, make you feel like you love your job. Like some of these things get dialed back a little bit. There's less space. If you are saying that I'm going to try and keep here's where it is. I landed. I found it just by blah, blah, blahing. If you want to be at your maximum potency, you want to be optimized while you're at school, actually between the bells, I don't believe there's a better space to be your optimal educator than if you are connected with a school. Because I do believe that when you sort of move outside of that and you become more of a servant to the system, which we all are, but more broadly, having that sort of like consultancy space, then all of a sudden your creativity gets diffused both in and outside of work time. And then I get in this weird space. Like, I like when I say work life balance, it's not just a number of things on a seesaw, it's the density of those things. So I would never, I have a harder time thinking about work life balance means that I get to this for me, that work life balance means that these all have equal weightings and they're equally distributed across the seesaw. I like certain things to be on one side of the seesaw and the other seesaw. I don't want them to be on the other side. I want to be able to choose which things I put on either side of the seesaw. And again, still keeping left side, right side equal. Um, as went my blah 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 on this when I started, your ability to notice how you have those things dialed in. I feel it's because you're able not only to decide the number of things on each side, but you can also decide the density of those things on each side. And I really do think that's a great sense of creative freedom and a sense of growth. Um, a sense of growth in your job, and I've come to appreciate it as well. And that one of the it's so simple to me, and it's so simple to me. But my current principal said when I applied for a headship, they didn't even pause on the "oh, you didn't get it." They just went right to "you have the ability to demonstrate leadership in other ways. Go for it." That was it. I was like, that was like Band-Aid, like right off. There was no, and I took that to heart. That was 2 years ago, and I haven't looked back. And I feel like I'm still honoring my direction. I don't know if leadership is a direction, but I'm honoring that vector. I'm just doing it in very different ways. And I'm now on the other side. Right now, I was I was overly confident that I needed to arrive in an administrative place to sort of clearly demonstrate that I was a leader. I think I've definitely stepped back from that and recognizing that the leadership opportunities inside of building are rife. There's so many, and I can do it in a way that I feel like I'm dialed in like you. I don't even question. I'm beyond the point of even questioning my decision anymore because now I'm immersed in the work, as DG kind of mentioned in the Twitter feed, like just doing the work. So I like where you've pushed my thinking today in the convo. I like this. I'm also really, the thing, like all of a sudden I have retirement on the brain. So I've got this kind of giddy up kind of like mindset as well. And what I mean by that is it's a get to work because you only have access to this fertile space in the way that it is for a shorter amount of time than you realize. So make a difference. Like really like make a difference. Make mistakes, make a difference. Do the work, make a difference. So, and I really like Manhattan cocktails. That's what I had last night when I went and saw Trevor Noah. It was a Manhattan.
Did you feel anything after having that beverage? Did you feel the effects of the alcohol at all, or no, it doesn't work
I
that way
felt
for you?
great.
Okay.
No, as in, did I feel a little inebriated? Like, did I feel a little
Did you feel
wobbly
like
or?
kinda, yeah, like, a little off?
No, no, no.
No
I
feeling, eh?
mean, well, apart from the absolute joy of an amazingly made cocktail, You know,
But you
props
did
to props to Sonia. I met another Sonia. That's the bartender's name. She made an amazing. Karen had a gin and tonic. It was awesome, delicious, absolutely delicious.
bro, those are the moments,
Hmm.
right? Those are the moments. It's like, this is another thing I've been working on, those little moments each day.
Mm-hmm.
I tweeted something yesterday that I read from Ryan Holiday about,
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go have a Manhattan after the podcast. I'm gonna go
hey,
ahead, Ryan
you
Holiday.
you do what you need to do with your
Saturday is
beverages.
defined differently. Yep, work-life balance.
Yeah, no, for sure. You do your thing. I'm gonna do my thing. But Ryan Halliday said in one of the Daily Stoic emails, or the email from yesterday, that one quote, one story, one conversation that makes you better.
Hmm.
And I
One
was like,
Manhattan,
one,
just
yeah,
one, just one.
one quote, one story, one Manhattan, one
One, yeah,
conversation that makes
yeah,
you
yeah.
better. Um, it only takes the one thing, and for
Hmm.
me, I've been working on it's many things, but they're the small things, and being aware of them and just letting them sink in can make a positive difference in me. And I've been enjoying that a lot, and kind of always look, they're like Easter eggs. I'm kind of like always looking
Hmm.
around the corner to see what is the next thing that can give me some joy, a little bit of boost. Because like I told you yesterday, I was tested a couple of times. I wasn't feeling so hot in those moments, but then one of those moments, I walked out of a school and the sun was shining down and the air was brisk, and I literally stopped on my way back to the car, took in some deep breaths, just looked up at the sun, was like, okay, it's a nice day. It's a nice day, and I get to breathe in this air, and I get to move around. So this is a really cool thing. And it was just that acknowledgement, that awareness, that was like, okay, move on. It's time for the next thing that comes in front of me. And it's like, it's just these little things. I don't know if it's like because I'm getting older. I don't know what it is. I feel like I'm a little bit wiser. I think that I need to keep this going as much as I can, make it a habit to just always be looking for Easter eggs, and then enjoy that moment. So when you talk about the Manhattan, like for me, it's like, oh, cool. Clough's out with his wife. They're going to have some fun, but in this moment in time, they're both having a beverage and kind of like enjoying their moment. That's really cool for me, and those are the things that I'm kind of looking for these days.
Hmm.
Um, and even with our new pet, our bunny rabbit, it's fun because he comes out and he does stuff, and the whole family's kind of wrapped around him. And it's like, I certainly see a difference in the behavior and the attitudes in the house. Like, my wife's kind of been uber stressed lately, and I think that the rabbit is helping. Like, I see her kind of playing with him and talking to him, and I it helps kind of bring things down. And even with the boys, bring things down. Even with me in terms of like being loud, um, I'm not as loud. I'm like aware of when I need to yell for someone in the house, no matter where they are. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't do that because it might startle the rabbit. Just I know. It sounds weird,
No,
but it's
dude,
like it's
I've witnessed your transformation. I called you out on that one when you're mid polo to me, and then you turn and kind of do the, oh, don't you bite the couch,
yeah,
don't, and then you get into the do dee doo dee doo dee that voice, right? And I use that with my cat too. I don't know. I mean, my cat though, Ollie will often he has the like his look back when I get into that space. It's just like leave me alone. Like he masters the cat disinterested look. He's got that look. So I get it. There's science there, right? There's science there. There's science there about how that releases stuff into the brain, the feel good stuff. The noticing is cool. I think the simplistic way of identifying it is as I get older. Like that's a pretty simplistic, straightforward. People go, oh yeah, that's true. Get older, wiser, yada 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 yada. But I would say that there's really something to that wisdom, though. That wisdom doesn't happen just because you get old. I met a lot of people that are old. I'm like, man, you are not wise. They got some smarts, but they're not wise. It's the integration of it, right? It's the being able to take life experience, the understanding that new experience is going to happen to you, and to avoid that aversion factor of new experience. Like the ability to, I think wisdom is entirely contingent on your ability to keep new experiences impacting you. Like that's kind of like the thing for me. You can't say that you get to smart to a certain level and then you just coast for the last 40 years of your life. Man, I've met some people that are like that, they got that kind of living lockdown and they're not very interesting to be around. But you get around someone that's like 70 years old and they're talking about Pokemon Go and the great poutine that they just had on a Friday, right? And then not being able to get out of bed in the morning because their back hurts. You're like, that's real. And yet they're still sitting there talking to you the next day and they're ready to sort of do something. Just give me a moment. I'll breathe it out and I'm good, right? Like they know how to notice and check themselves. They know how to care for themselves. They know how to measure the moment and say, I can have it's measure the moment. Maybe it's more than what they need. And they can say, but I can have this one part of it. That's that type of wisdom. And if that's what you're noticing right now, the anarchy that the new family member brings switches pretty quickly into cool memory making, right? It really does. You sort of choose. We talk about the one of the interesting things I've started to think about is that the power and connection that I feel within my family should not only be our ability to help and defend each other, but our capacity to understand when to open those doors and let somebody else in. Ryan Holiday tapped on that one this week too, right? But I think that metaphor can be used. I think there's wisdom in that metaphor.
I'm gonna go dark for a second,
Do
and
it.
I have to say, when we did get the rabbit, I did say to my wife, "We need to talk about what happens the day one of us discovers that his life is over."
Hmm.
And she kind of
Hmm.
looked at me, and I said, "If I come home from work one day and he's not alive, what do you want me to do? Like, how do we process that? What do we do?" Um, and she kind of looked at me, and I was like, "I don't want it. I don't want I, we need to talk about it because I don't want to have to be the one to see him and then concern myself with what the next move is. I'd rather talk to you about it." And she said, "Yeah, we should talk about that. We haven't yet, but we really should because um, it's not. I was gonna say it's funny. It's not funny. It's like one day he's gonna die."
Hmm.
Um, and it's going to negatively affect everybody in this house.
Hmm.
So I think it's a conversation that needs to be had with the whole family. What will the process be? How will we wait until everybody comes home? Will we leave him there and wait until everybody comes home and we can deal with it together? Like, just, I know it's like the kids aren't going to be happy. They're not going to want to talk about it. But my thing is, we should have a plan so we don't have to think about a plan when it happens. Let's just know let's have a way of operating. Kind of like the Queen. She planned her funeral. It's been on the books for years. Everybody in the know with a responsibility. Instead of thinking, they just pulled out the playbook and acted. And I want that. I really want that. It's not going to make anything any easier. It's just going to make it like, okay, get the playbook out, follow the playbook because we established it. We established it. Now we got to process it. Um, and boy, oh boy, does it give me an appreciation for anybody who has a pet and actually cares for them. Wow. Like, over the years, when somebody, like, as a teacher, and I've had kids come in or they've missed a day of school, and then I get an email from the parents saying our dog died last night. I've not been like, well, who cares? I've been like, oh, that sucks. I'm sorry, but I didn't really
You
understand.
can disassociate from it, or you don't feel that you don't have the emotional association that comes along with that. It's a fact. You can be
Yeah.
practical. You understand how mourning and grieving can work, but you have the privilege of thinking about it on a functional level, right? Here's how I support it. Here's what we're going to do. Thank you for informing me. I get that. You're now on the other side of that conversation thinking about the what if, it strikes me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I know. I know we've only had him for a short time, but if he were to go, it's gonna devastate everybody in this house.
Mhm. I'll be the one to say that's okay. And it's the exact thing often that isn't said. It's okay. I mean, one of the things, I don't remember the exact frame, but talking about things that could potentially be traumatic. They have a couple kind of pieces to it. One, the event, I think, is like if it's unexpected, so you didn't kind of see it coming. Um, that like you hadn't made a plan, which you're sort of saying you're making a plan, um, and that despite the plan, you still didn't have any control in it. Like it just it we've as a family, I'll say as a family, we've experienced two, three pet three pet deaths. So three deaths of a close. I'll say, well, okay. So and here's the thing. I'll say we've experienced four deaths in the family. My dad, and then we had two hamsters, and then Darcy, our dog. Um, none of those. So two of them. I'll just say I do not have the experience that talking about it ahead of time made it worse. I don't have that experience. My experience is that by talking about it, you can, if it's a plan, sure, that's still talking about it. Um, the stoic in me, maybe in you, says you have to catastrophize. You need to sort of figure out and see yourself in that space if you're not willing it to be. Some people kind of go there. Well, I don't want to talk about it because don't talk, don't talk. You'll just bring it on. You'll make it happen. It doesn't work like that, right? You have no play there. Um, these things can happen. To one of our hamsters, we came home and its back was broken. Its back was broken. It had fallen off its wheel. It had fallen inside its cage. So life makes choices away from you, and then you're left to kind of like, how am I going to be wagged by this? I'll just go back to you and your family being devastated is an exact correct response to it. It is.
100%. But I'd like to establish some policy on how to proceed once it occurs.
Hmm.
That's all. Because
Yep.
hey, and you know what? We've talked my when my father passed away, I remember always kind of bugging my parents about like what happens if one of you dies and like we don't talk about that. And then when it happened, it was a gong show because we were trying to like we were emotional obviously and traumatized. It was a friggin' gong show making decisions that making important decisions while being totally stressed out and upset. It's just not a good combo. So for me, with the rabbit, all I want to know is if I come home and the rabbit's passed away, how do you want to proceed? Like, do we just leave? Do I leave him there until the whole family gets home and we gather and we mourn the loss together, and then we bury him in the backyard, or like let's kind of explore it a little bit so that we kind of have an idea, right? Because
Hmm.
some people might just get rid of the rabbit right away, and then that might cause other people more trauma. So it's like, let's just talk about this. Let's figure this out. You know, do you want me to text you at work and tell you that the rabbit passed away? Or do we just wait until everybody naturally comes home and they're exposed? Like just stuff like that, right? Like
Hmm.
that's all. I just would like some direction. I'd like to know. Because there's nothing worse. I can imagine I come home, rabbits pass. I'm assuming I'd be home first. It's very possible I would not. And then I would get a text from one of the kids saying, "You need to come home right now. The rabbit's dead," or whatever. It's like, oh, shoot. And we know it's going to be devastating, which you say is normal. And I agree. Anytime something you love is gone, it's hard. It's not easy. I feel I need to talk about it a little bit and see where we go from
Hmm.
there. But
Yep.
And then this is one of the reasons why I was opposed to getting a pet. Because it's just one more life that positively impacts you, you hope, for a long time, but then that drawback is that when they're gone, it's difficult. So that was one of the reasons why I was like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't do this, but uh, here we are with the rabbit, and we're enjoying it. So that's good.
It is it's the um maybe you didn't see it coming, but very clear lesson in memento mori. We have the luxury of human beings to not notice the sort of beginning, like to sort of actually have in our brains, we can push off this idea that we have a beginning and an ending. We can do that. That's our brain can do that for us. And to not to not notice that for me has become I have now accepted that it is important to notice that, um to not be comfortable with it, but to develop a practice of noticing it, um because it does help remind me that um that there is a metric to my daily life, right? There's a once in a once lifetime chance to do a thing, and you are going back to the, noticing, Karen and I last night going to see the comedian, going to see Trevor Noah, and having a Manhattan, an overpriced cocktail. But that was a once in a once lifetime kind of opportunity. There's no assurance we're ever going to see a there's no assurance nor reasonable plan to say that we're going to go see that dude again. And we've been in moments where we've sort of paid out for an event, and the night before stuff is happening, and it, other life things are popping up, and you realize that I've realized that, um, to fight to hang on to the future that was just in your hands 5 minutes ago for me is wrongheaded. I got to work with what I got right in front of me. And, that's kind of led me to say things like, that's okay. The cost of those tickets, that the price of that meal, we've already paid for that. We've already absorbed the cost of that. There's no more value right now apart from lost potential fond memories. Like there's nothing right now that we're losing by not going, that is worth for me to kind of focus on, because all I'm doing right now is, if I paid $200 for a tickets to something, and then that event is a month in the future, and then a month in the future something is happening that's keeping me from going that night right up into the 5 minutes before we're supposed to leave. Hell, even if I'm sitting in the lobby of that place, the only thing I'm losing out on at that point is the experience. I'm trading one experience over the other. That $200 is already gone. It's already on my account. It's already spent. It's already, you could say, wasted or not wasted, but that the money part of it is gone. Me sitting in the lobby, something happens, and I have to go sort of notice it. Then that's what life's putting at me. And I know there's people that will say, no, try and do everything to try and part of their management of that moment could very well be make all things happen well. Keep all those dials. For me, I don't work that way. I'm not that person. I'll say even coming home last night through the driving, which was like the commute was brutal. Like coming home, like normally between Toronto and my home, like it's a 40-minute on a good day, 40, 45. It was 2.5 hours. And there was a whole lot of conversation like, should I take the accessories? Should I do this? Should I do this? Do that? Do all these different sort of things, which didn't change the fact that really I was at peace with just waiting. I was at peace with, like, it doesn't matter. Like at this point, I'm going to get home. I'm going to have a shorter sleep than what I normally would. And I'm going to get up and I'm going to go on. Like it just kind of stayed very kind of like, this is what's in front of me, to try and think, do I optimize it? Sometimes optimizing doesn't help. Not in the way that I've learned it should, because if optimizing means all things end well, I don't know if that's a truth for life. Optimizing might feel good in the moment because you feel like you're somehow controlling it. But I feel like I've learned too much. That sense of control is not real. Here's a question: that conversation that you said about the planning with with your spouse about the rabbit, is that a whole family conversation? The first conversation, is it a whole family conversation, or do you have a sense like you need to stage it out in one space first and then bring a frame to your kids?
That's a good question. It is my opinion that the first conversation should just be Sarah and I,
Mhm,
because I'd like to be on the same page as her.
mhm,
'Cause sometimes sometimes we go at things and we're not on the same page, and the
mhm,
kids, they feed
mhm,
off that. So, I think I'd like to hear her perspective. I wanna provide her with mine. I think when I did broach it with her a while ago, quickly, she was, not opposed to what I was saying. She was like, "Yeah, maybe we should have, maybe we should have some parameters around how to proceed, um, when it happens." You know, she may want, like, for example, she may want me to text her right away and tell her, or she may want me to not. Like, I'm gonna wait and see. Um, so protocols like that, we're gonna her and I'll talk first, and then we'll bring it to the kids, and it will upset them. And my youngest will make fun of me instantly. He'll say, "Memento mori, your dad has no emotion." He will go there, like,
yeah.
dad is, the reaper. Here he comes. And it's like, no, in fact, I do have emotion, and I am trying to be empathetic. I'm trying to learn. I'm preparing myself too. Like, I'm not looking forward to the end of the bunny's life. And he just got here. Right. So it's like, I need some things, and we'll see how it goes. If it ends with, if it ends with, we don't want to talk about this, we don't want to do this, then I'm still going to prepare myself in terms of, I'll have my own playbook. If I
Mm.
come home and I see this, I'm gonna do this, this, and this, and then they'll respond to me any way they wish. But in this moment, in the present, they're telling me we don't want to deal with this. We don't want to go there right now. I'll say awesome, because I am consulting them for a reason.
Mhm.
I'm still gonna prepare myself because I know that it's not going to be a good moment for me. So I want to ensure that I have a plan so I don't need to think about what to do. I already have something that tells me what to do, and I can deal with my emotions. I can be in that moment and not have to worry about 100 other things.
I like these big dad moments. It's necessarily complicated, so good for you for working through it. Yep, good for you for working through it.
It's just something I feel is appropriate for me at this time.
Mhm.
So, did you draw anything today, Christopher? It's the hot seat. Is that what that is?
Yeah.
It's like we're playing a game.
Yeah, I know, right? I like it. I like it. I like the drawing and you're like, "Hey, is it that? Or is it that?" Or when you say, "I really can't see, oh, wait, I see orange. I see," it's like the old Romper Room. Remember the did you remember that show, Romper Room? Pulling
Yeah, I
up the
remember.
magic mirror. I see Roland. I see Chris. I see Jimmy and
Jimmy.
Julia. Yeah.
Jimmy always makes it in to our
J-
conversations, eh?
good old Jimmy.
Good old Jimmy. Okay, bro. Well, thanks for the great conversation.
You too.
Great picture, the hot seat. I love it. Hope you have a good week. We're in October now, baby.
I
September's
know.
gone. It's behind us.
Yeah, it is. I'm all good. I'm all good. I like the you mentioned the freshness. You mentioned the freshness in the air earlier in the pod, and I'm digging that. I'm digging the freshness too.
This was season 6, episode 5, number 213. The big 213
213, baby.
decoded
213.
podcast. Have a great week, Chris.
Thanks, man.